confuses birds. The temperatures are changing. The weather is changing. So they start seeing creatures like pelicans, for example, in an area that they never saw one before. So at night, they see this big bird, you know, with it looks like a pterodactyl flying, and they're getting them confused. I mean, that's what's going on. And I don't know. I'm rambling now. It's my turn, I guess.
Yeah. You know, that sort of begs the question, though. You know, what if? And this is always in the back of our minds, and this is what makes it magical, right? All these things, you know, it's that what if in the back of our brains that says, you know, what if it is a pterodactyl?
Yeah.
Because, you know, if we even entertain that for a second, then that's when, you know, the locks to the paradigm start getting shifted in our own mind to where we start thinking of other possibilities. Now, there's dangers in that because you can go off, you can think up whatever elaborate fantasy you want, you know, for what you think is reality. But it may not be that reality. You know, we need to determine that reality. And, you know, I would love to find a real pterodactyl. I do think there are still magical things.
Oh, there is.
And the world.
And when we come back, Michael, when we come back, I'm going to talk to you about some of these things out there that I think exist. So if you want to grab yourself a cup of Java, we'll be back in 2 minutes. Everybody,
all right,
don't hang up off the show. We'll be back.
Vamos fazer regaço, regaço, regaço. Voar em altos amassos, amassos, amassos. Vamos fazer regaço, regaço, regaço. Rafa Gomes. Digam no beat. Não perde tempo escolhendo a roupa, porque no fim eu sei que vou tirar. Fala tchau pro seu batom na boca e fala oi pra quem te faz pirar. Se você já tá com a mesma sensação, pode vir, que eu tô indo não. Tá descontrolada toda essa tara e não para porque a coisa ficou mara. Vou te ganhar no cansaço, no cansaço, no cansaço. Vamos fazer regaço, regaço, regaço. Voar em altos amassos, amassos, amassos. Vamos fazer regaço, regaço, regaço. Vou te ganhar no cansaço, no cansaço, no cansaço.
If you would like to hear Night Dreams Talk Radio on your local radio station, let them know. Tell them to check out www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. And thank you.
Coming to you from some far point station, like a cosmic tumbleweed, both north and south of the Pleiades. Here's your host, Gary Anderson.
That is me. We got to do something about that thunder. Anyway, Michael, we are back after the break. I hope you got yourself a new or some cup, something to drink, like a nice cup of Java or something.
Mm-hmm. I did.
That's great. So, I mean, how old were you when you really got interested in cryptids and UFOs and stuff. I mean, were you like in junior high school or before or in high school? When did it hit you?
As I said, my mom got all the tabloid newspapers. Her papers, as she called each week. Like the National Enquirer, Weekly World News, the Globe, all those. So she gave them to me afterwards, and back in the 70s, those things were filled with UFO stories, some legitimate ones, incidentally. The National Enquirer went on to fund some UFO study stuff. But it also had, all the Bigfoot stories and Loch Ness Monster and all that stuff. And, I got those and I cut those out and started collecting those into files probably when I was like 6 or 7 maybe. And they saw that I liked them and, so they encouraged that. They got me books and all that sort of stuff. So, and I watched the In Search of and Ancient Astronaut, the Chariots of the Gods and all that stuff, So that was sort of, my mother was interested in that, so I passively became interested in it, and then actively became interested in it, with Close Encounters of the Third Kind, certainly. By the time I was 8, I was entrenched. I'm of that generation that saw Star Wars brand new in the theater, so it blew my mind away. Same thing with Close Encounters, the visual spectacle of it just, was fascinating, and hearing all the stories and just thinking in your mind, what if, maybe there's, maybe science is so rigid that it's not open to possibilities, but maybe, some of this stuff's just crazy stories, so I was, always interested in the mystery aspect of it, really throughout my childhood. And also when I was a kid, we moved around a lot, within St. Louis. I went to, several different schools. So I was, always the new kid, seemingly. So I was introverted in a lot of ways, and introverts, as you know, like to read. So, I would find myself at a lot of new schools and, spend a lot of time in libraries, and here's the thing, a lot of people may not know this. The very first thing in the library that you're going to find is UFOs. In the Dewey Decimal System, 0.001, that's UFO books. So, no matter what new library I found myself in, I could always find the UFO books and jump into those. And Loch Ness Monster and all those mysteries, those are... the very first thing in the library. So I gravitated to that and consumed that and never stopped.
Yeah, well, that's the good thing, is never stopping. One thing I will say that you touched base on earlier, nowadays, I mean, if you go on the internet, there's literally thousands of podcasts, thousands of radio shows out there. I was retired, from broadcasting for 10 years, and a good friend of mine that I would go see every summer on my way to Reno, Las Vegas. I'd stop at Pahrump and go spend a day with my friend. And he's the one that got me back 2 years ago into broadcasting. And it's been, but I find I get really annoyed fast with a lot of shows out there because I paid my dues. I started back in 76. I mean, I've done everything in broadcasting you could ever do. And I worked hard to get where I got. I was on some of the major stations at one point in my life. And I find it so frustrating nowadays. People can go out, and buy a $20 microphone or a $10 microphone from Walmart, plug it in their computer, and start doing a talk show. And a lot of these people, if you listen to them, they don't even know what they're talking about in the paranormal. If it's ghost hunting, or they got their little ghost box there, or if they're talking about UFOs. And I find it really a slap in my face, and a slap in a lot of people who take broadcasting, as a professional career, and they get on here and they don't even know what they're talking, and they do more damage in the paranormal than, trying to promote the paranormal. We got a caller on there. Who do we have?
Hi, Gary. This is James. How are you guys doing tonight?
We're doing good. Are you eating frosted flakes again tonight, James?
Nope. All done with them.
Okay.
Anyway, I would like to ask your guest, where do you consider over the United States the hotspot for cryptids to be, and your travels?
Well, there's been some debate recently as to whether or not there's actually such a thing as a hotspot. I'm sort of on the fence. I like I said, I've pinpointed a lot of places, and there are places where there's a lot of localized anomalous things going on. There are localized anomalous areas. I call them la-las, la-la lands. There are places where, for 100 years maybe, or even more, something strange has gone on. People have seen, spook lights, or ghost lights, or there's been some sort of cryptid scene or a UFO or whatever. And I think that you find with these localized areas, it's not just one phenomena. I think that you'll find places where people are seeing UFOs and cryptids at the same time. Are they connected? I don't know. Maybe one story is baloney and another one's real, or maybe they are somehow connected. That's for us to try to determine. Really, these things occur everywhere. People encounter cryptids of different varieties. Of course, if we're talking cryptid hotspots, there's different locations for different kinds of cryptids, obviously. But there are anomalous areas all over the place, and really everywhere that I have gone has some sort of anomalous circumstance. What's a hot spot for cryptids? I guess we could say places like Skinwalker. People are seeing things. Certainly in the Pacific Northwest, Vancouver Island, I think, is probably a Bigfoot central. Somewhere around Mount Shasta, Rainier area, Mount Adams, sort of in that triangle is sort of, your classic Sasquatch central. Well, you got places in Ohio, that people regularly report things. You have swamp creatures and swamp monsters, down in Honey Island. Some of these monsters get names because they're sighted more than by one person. So, when you have multiple sightings, it sort of becomes a hot spot, and it becomes a real hot spot when it's hot. When there's a continuous level of sightings, or there's waves, or you can look through an area and see that it's not just one account. That's in some instances entire groups of people seeing whatever anomalous things. So it's sort of come to the forefront. I think in the next episode of the Unidentified, the To the Stars UFO show, I think they're going to talk about some hot spots, and I think we'll actually be debating that pretty much within the community as to what designates a hot spot. How do we determine these things? Because if something is occurring actively in one location, that's an opportunity for us to investigate, and that's an opportunity for us to do scientific investigations beyond just tourist type stuff. I've been to Waverly Hills. I've done like the overnight ghost hunt sort of thing, and experienced some interesting stuff. And haunted houses are great localized hotspots of paranormal activity, because with all these, they are hotspots. We're dealing with anomalies regardless. There are places in South Central Missouri that I've been to, the secret Marley Woods, where it's basically Missouri's Skinwalker Ranch. You got Bigfoots, UFOs, spook lights, all in one location. And people have experienced stuff there of all these different varieties for decades. So it's a great area to look at. I sort of, that's sort of my specializations just in what I do, just by the fact that I'm mapping these places and visiting them.